Okay, now we should be streaming. And yet it's still not. There it is. There we are. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Once again, it's time for the Arete Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Stevie Wicks, Cool Beans Candle Company, for obvious reasons. We'll get to them in a moment, but I would like to introduce full disclosure it's my mom, but she is a lifelong entrepreneur as well. It's probably her fault that I'm the way I am. I'm going to blame her. So we're here to basically dispel a lot of the myths surrounding entrepreneurship, starting, and more importantly, maintaining a business, because that's something that nobody ever talks about. Much like in the movies, it always ends after the start. Um, if you've been on the internet for the last 5 years, you're well aware that there's a ton of people on the internet that are going to tell you exactly how you can start a business and get rich for $500. All you have to do is buy their course or buy their book, and they have all the secrets. So I thought it would be fun. Between two articles, I have 10 myths about entrepreneurship. Now, I'm going to be honest, some of these I agree with, but between the two, we should have a pretty good conversation. But before we get into that, would you like to give the people your background, your entrepreneurship background?
Um, I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I take full responsibility for Jake having it now. It's really very difficult if you have that spirit to work with somebody else or for somebody else. But I did it for a lot of years because I had to put food on the table. Um, so you do what you have to do, and that's another thing to learn about being an entrepreneur. You do what you got to do. But I would say probably I really started my first business maybe 35 years ago. I had a shop in downtown Shelbyville, which, if you're going to start a business, do some demographics before. Um,
The short
but
answer is don't start it in Shelbyville.
yeah, didn't want to say that, but yeah. Or I think a lot of small towns are the same. Um, if you're popular and in with the in crowd, then your business is going to go well for a bit, but it won't sustain it forever. So anyway, that was my first business. It was a gift shop, and I was in it with another lady who was, um, well, her husband made really good money, so it didn't matter. And we were paying rent on the building, and that always gets in the way a little bit when you have to pay rent, and utilities and all that good stuff. Um, so that didn't go well. We moved the business, which is another huge mistake. Um, you really lose a lot when you move, and people don't understand that. But I mean, we moved 3 doors down, and we lost a lot. People didn't know where we were anymore, and it's like,
I,
really?
I've had the same location for 9 years, and there are still people that come in and go, "I had no idea you were here."
Yeah, I had it for 15 years, and the same thing. And I was right on the circle, right, right there. You almost ran into me when you went around the circle. But yeah, same thing. I had it for 15 years, and I didn't know you were there. And then I talk to people now, and they go, "Oh, that was you," you know. So the second one went a little better because we bought the building, so rent wasn't an issue. So I could um, disillusion myself that I was making some money, even though, all things considered, I wasn't. Ended up making money on the building itself, though, when we sold it. But anyway, so I've had probably 4 businesses, and then the one I have now. So, but the one I have now, I have had for about 15 years, and it's Stevie Wick's Cool Beans Candle Company.
Oh, like the sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah, a lot like that.
It's not nepotism. It's just why would somebody else sponsor a podcast where you have the owner of Stevie Wicks on it?
Yeah, but
That
and I can tell you this. I honestly, truly believe that my product is unsurpassed. I mean, people that buy my candles love my candles. So my product is not the problem. I hand pour every single candle that goes out of this business, so I know the quality is there. Um, but it's just you got to get out there, and it's so hard to get out there. That's that's the biggest deal, I think. But you asked me for background. I'm supposed to be answering your
well,
questions.
we're gonna get it. It's a conversation because I was just gonna touch on something you said. So that was probably the hardest lesson that I had to learn was that because part of my background, I had a video production and editing company, very small, but I, especially when you live in a place like Indiana, there's not a lot of people who there's a lot of people who can edit videos, but there are very few that know how to do it well.
Uh-huh.
And there is a craft to it, but people here do not pay for that because to them it's not worth it. So that was the biggest realization I had is like I have the skills and they're worth a certain amount, but if people aren't willing to pay it or they don't know it exists, because advertising is a whole other headache when it comes to
Yeah.
business.
I can say the same thing. There's ladies melting crayons in their kitchen and putting a wick in it and calling it candle and selling it for $4, you know, and they don't understand why I can't sell candles for 15. It's a clearly a whole different ball game, but and that's like the same on the same principle. Um, Grandma knits some booties, and so they think they can turn that into a business. You know,
Well, Etsy made an entire business model profiting off of those people. So,
yeah,
in a
yeah,
way, but yeah, and then the other biggest thing is like you had mentioned a lot of people who start businesses either have a connection that can provide this is like the biggest thing that nobody really talks about. Donald Trump gets a lot of flack for this, but it's like frankly, it's how most businesses that you've heard of start out the same way. They either know somebody who's already in the industry and can provide a lot of fast-tracked information, resources and or people or money. Because yeah, it's true. If your parents can give you $4 million, you can probably start a business. Whether or not you keep it going, that's where the individual entrepreneur comes in, and that's kind of the proving ground. But when you don't have that, and you don't have the support of influential people, like nowadays, if you had celebrity connections, or a lot of celebrities start their own businesses,
mm,
other than what they do. But there are companies that exist that set up these brands. Like I don't know if you know who Kylie Jenner is.
oh yeah,
One of Kim Kardashian. I think it's Kim Kardashian's youngest sister,
yeah,
via Bruce Jenner. But she made, I mean, she made millions off of her makeup and lip products.
uh-huh,
A company made all that, and they just slapped her brand on it.
yeah.
Which, to my mind, is that does that really make her an entrepreneur, or did she just get approached by a cosmetics company and say, "We want to put your name on this brand"? And but is it really her business? And that's a question. I don't know what all went into it,
Yeah,
uh, um, but it does cast some doubt because it's not like she made the cosmetics.
right,
I
right.
don't know if maybe she collaborated with them to create certain types of products, and that might be the case. Entrepreneurship is a sliding scale like that. But when most people think entrepreneur, they think somebody who's starting a business from the ground up.
Yeah, it's just like Dr. Phil's wife, Robin, has those cosmetics. Well, she gets free advertising at the end of every show, and you know, millions and millions of people. So, you know, I, you know, I, I'd like to have that. Although, if you get, I was going to tell you earlier, if you gave me $5 million, I don't think I'd work anymore. I don't know, because you still got to do something, and it drives me crazy, but I still got to do something.
Well, and that's the other part that I think a lot of people misunderstand, because when you're talking about entrepreneurship, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, obviously, we all want to be rich, right? But being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be wealthy. What it can mean, and what it does mean for most people, is you make enough to live a decent lifestyle, but it's your business. Like, it's not even necessarily that it gives you the freedom, but you control your destiny. And if it goes really well for you, then yeah, you do get some freedom. You get some financial freedom. You're able to build a legacy
Uh,
for your grandchildren to ruin, because statistically, the second generation keeps going and the third generation drives it into the ground. That's just historically how it happens. Um, but yeah, entrepreneurship can mean a lot of different things. But is there any more of your background, or do we want to get to the first question?
um, well, I went to college. I went to Purdue University, and I studied retailing, actually, fashion retailing and commercial art. Found out really quickly I was not the artist that I thought I was.
I
um,
I, I disagree, but
well, anyway, and then life came, and you get out of college, and you got to get a job. And I don't want a pity party, but I ended up having to have some emergency surgery because my gallbladder ruptured. And at that time, I didn't have insurance, and on and on and on. And so then um, I lived my life very happily until um, in my when I was 30, I married your dad, and uh, that was fine. Actually, he was around when I had my very first business. He was not very supportive of it, but um, you know. Anyway, so then, like I said, life happened. So I worked and I did what I did on the side. And then after we divorced, I had two kids to feed and take care of. And so, and your dad was good. He paid child support and everything. So that was not a problem. But still, if you guys were 6 and 8 when we got our divorce, and you can't leave a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old alone while you do stuff. So there were a lot of times when you guys went to work with me. You sat in the conference room watching movies while I worked. But um, that's the other thing that people don't realize. And the other thing, you see it on soap operas all the time. So and so gets a divorce, and so she's got to get a job, and she's vice president of marketing in this huge corporation, and hello, that doesn't happen. At least it doesn't happen to me.
no, it doesn't happen, and it's dangerous, because that's portrayed in media, like what am I trying? Traditional media, like you say, soap operas or like TV dramas or whatever, or even comedies. They do it because it's lazy writing. Well, it's not lazy writing, but it's expedited writing. They need somebody to be somewhere like. I'm not a huge fan of Friends, but Friends starts out with the character Rachel uh, running away from her wedding. She's from a wealthy family, so she has to, quote, get a job. So she starts working at a coffee shop. And somehow, while working at a coffee shop, she's able to afford rent in an apartment in Manhattan.
Right, right.
And then eventually, I believe she becomes a purchaser for a large fashion brand or something like that. With, I don't believe she went to school, but maybe she did. But again, it's just, the show's since been criticized because they have these gigantic apartments, and even with roommates and even with good jobs, it's kind of like, Manhattan.
Uh-huh.
I don't know about all that. But it's like they're more concerned with the interpersonal relationships, so they don't have time to write in the struggle. Different shows would, but that would be the focal point of the story.
Right.
But the double edged sword of that is it gets them to expedite their story, but it sets a very, very unrealistic expectation. And actually, another show, Third Rock from the Sun, that I am a huge fan of, makes fun of that when the characters Tommy and August, they are in high school. I think they're like freshmen, they're 14 or 15 years old, and August is talking about how their plans for the future. And she's like, we're going to move to New York and we're going to get a flat, but it's okay because we'll both get jobs in bookstores.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now, the difference is they made that joke because it's obviously funny because anybody, and I mean, you're right, life hits hard and fast, and
Yeah.
but I think the key to that entrepreneurial spirit is you'll have setbacks, you'll have roadblocks, but you're just stubborn as hell and won't take no for an answer. And the other thing that happens when those setbacks happen is you learn over time, some of us learn faster than others, is that you've probably set your initial standards too high because of shows like Shark Tank and this and the other. And then let's be real, to even qualify for Shark Tank, you have to already have an existing business that's at
Right.
least a certain percentage of market share. So like these people that are coming on, they're portraying them as like small businesses. These are not small operations. These are pretty large.
Yeah.
Some of them are already being carried in retailers and yeah.
I joked about that because I said, I'll go on Shark Tank and they'll say, how many cans have you sold in the last month? And I'll say, three. They'll say, 3 million? No, not three.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
and I mean you never get on the show.
Oh, right. I know.
Yeah. But if you did, if you somehow like lied, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, the other myth I wanted to dispel, when you have your own business, people think you can just lock the door and take off anytime you want.
Oh dear God, don't get me
Yeah.
started on that.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And the reality is you have to be there all the time because if somebody has the sniffles, guess who gets to work that day? Or do somebody else's job in addition to your own that day?
And as part of the entrepreneurial spirit, I think we think that nobody can do it as well as we can.
That's probably true though. I would act well. Okay, it's not true that nobody can do it as well, but attached to that is you can't expect anyone else to care as much as you because nobody will.
That's right.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a oh I'll just do it myself sort of thing, which can be really detrimental. But I think that's less detrimental than people say it is, just because I mean for the most part, at least in my business, it's true. Nobody will do it quite as well as I will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's probably the case when you invent the system.
Uh-huh.
So that there might be something to that. So this first myth about this is from entrepreneur.com. The first myth is providing a great service or product and figuring out how to market it. Oh, sorry, that's not the first myth. That is going into it. Oh, if my product or service is good, I'll be successful.
Oh, I just talked about that.
Yeah.
I am convinced that nobody pours a better candle than I do.
No, and then not only that, I'm going to nerd out on the people for a minute here. There's an age old for those who don't know. There's an age old problem. Soy wax is tell the people real quick why soy wax is better than paraffin or
Soy wax burns at a cooler temperature. It burns clean. You won't have any soot with a soy candle if it's poured correctly, and that's a big if. Um, so with paraffin, you're going to have a lot of soot. You're going to have steam. You can just watch a paraffin candle and see the black coming off the wick. I mean, you can see it. If you go into a house where they burned paraffin candles all the time, you take something off the wall and there's a big white space, or bright space where the picture was, where the smoke didn't get. Um, but also, there are problems with soy in that it doesn't hold color as well historically, but they're working on that. And we have found a source that has some pretty good candle dye that
we
works with soy.
yeah, we have figured out a way or I should say we found a dye that will maintain color for I still have our first one we did 100% soy, that green one. It's still as green as the day we poured it.
Yeah.
So we found
Exceptions to that are probably red and black. They tend to fade worse. I
I've still got it's the remnants of a red candle that was actually poured around the same time at Christmas time, and it's still a pretty vibrant. I think the one, I guess I know which ones you're talking about. I think those were a soy paraffin blend. Or no, I'm sorry, you used the old dye.
That may be the old dye.
I think
Yeah.
it's the old dye because you're right. That fades really well. And then the other thing, for those who don't know, the other thing about paraffin, if you care at all about going green, paraffin is a petroleum-based product, whereas soy obviously isn't. It's a bean product.
And soy holds scent way better than paraffin.
Way better, which is the biggest advantage and the reason we really wanted to. Because in the past, if you wanted to do colored candles, it would have to be a soy paraffin blend, which wasn't the end of the world, but it was.
Right.
Soy wax is kind of your shtick. It's the big deal of it all. So when we
Yeah.
found that new product, it was very advantageous.
Yeah. And then next to that, soy does not hold the shape. So if you're pouring tarts, you need to beef that up with a little paraffin.
Either
But
that, or we've kind of found method because again I didn't know when I poured some of those tarts I used soy only, but I found that rapid cooling helps quite a bit.
yeah, but they'll flake when you put them in a plastic bag. All of a sudden, the plastic bag has wax all over it. And
Yep.
not very good marketing, but um, anyway, soy is definitely a better wax. And the other myth I'd like to dispel about candles is people say, "Oh, do you use essential oils?" Or "Are your candles all natural?" The only way that you can make an all natural candle is to use beeswax, and essential oils. Now, number one, beeswax is extremely expensive, and so are essential oils. And number two, essential oils can be very dangerous if they're not used properly. And where am I getting at? It drives me crazy when people say, "Are your candles all natural?" So I had to change my labeling. And the way I label it now is all natural soy wax candles. So I'm not saying all natural candles. I'm saying all natural soy wax
Well,
candles.
and that's another problem, not so much with entrepreneurship, but the world we live in. Because I remember we were this close to getting your candles in Fresh Time stores, and they stopped it because they weren't essential oils, and we explained to them that essential oils are not the best choice, even from a being natural perspective, because they can be very dangerous.
And they
And
don't even smell good in a candle.
right. Well, and
Yeah.
then there's the fact too that so you brought up beeswax. That even I wouldn't consider all natural because the beeswax that you buy to make a candle, it's still processed.
Yeah. It
That's
is.
like you're not. So is soy wax. So these are all like very loose definitions thought up by bureaucrats, probably to just give their friends. And that's the other thing that nobody talks about is how our government picks winners and losers in industry because all these standards, all these organic and all natural standards, are drafted up to benefit the people that donate money to their political campaigns. Like there's a reason like organic is not what you think it is. There are standards to which
No.
something to be considered organic. It's the same thing. The only difference is they're actually dirtier farms because they have to use natural fertilizers, which means they use shit. They use fecal matter. Which by the time you get your food, it's not
Oh,
like it's
yummy.
gonna. I mean, but let's be real here. That's what that means. Like a natural fertilizer is animal poop.
It's like that coffee, the really rare coffee that's made from the, I can't, is made from somebody's poop.
Is it bat droppings or I know what you're talking about. I can't remember what animal it is.
I can't either.
But yeah, that kind of thing. So organic, all natural are not what you think it means, but they're counting on people not doing their own research. But that's why, a company like Stevie Wicks, they've done the research for you. 15 plus years of research to find the best combination of products to deliver the best candle that can be made. And I will vouch for it personally because before even, and like again, full disclaimer, I'm involved with the company, but it's her company, but I help with it. But even before I got involved, like it was a no-brainer. These are the best candles. Oh, and then it's for the record, because Fresh Time does have candles in their stores. I'm calling them out. They're paraffin.
Hmm.
So their all-natural candles are petroleum-based.
They're not even soy.
No. I mean, they might have soy, but I saw. Oh no, well, they're at least a soy paraffin blend. But when they may have changed that, but I remember because when I was in the store looking, when I was trying to work that deal out, I looked at the candle, it was 100% paraffin.
Wow.
Well, and that's the other thing too. A lot of companies out there are advertising soy wax, and I sincerely doubt it's 100% soy. It's probably a blend.
Yeah, it probably is.
More than likely. But so yeah, back to the entrepreneurship side of things. Yeah, having you could have the best product in the world, and if nobody knows it exists, you're not going to sell any.
Yeah.
Now, I do truly believe it's easier to be an entrepreneur today. It's easier to be an entrepreneur today than it ever has been in the history of humankind. Because you have a lot of free resources. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it's easier. Because you have a lot of free resources, and if you can learn to use these things, and with a little bit of luck, it can catch on organically. Like for now, SEO, search engine optimization, is huge. It's a huge tool that does not cost a lot of money to do well. There are tons of companies that can help you with SEO, and it's relatively inexpensive, especially if it starts working. It pretty well pays for itself. Things like social media marketing, there's a ton of free online courses you can take. Google has a ton of them. Google's courses are like, I think it's $49 a month, but you can take unlimited courses. And the cool thing about Google's courses is at the end of it, you get a certification from Google. So even if you end up not using it for your business, it's something that could lead you to employment down the road. So most of the time, I won't recommend a paid course unless I know the person. There's sometimes where like somebody had a business and they've retired and then they start teaching. Because one of the things I always say, if I ever meet a business major who's going to college, I say, "Oh, what are you going to school for?" They say business. I'm like, really? Do yourself a favor. Question everything that teacher tells you until you find out who that teacher is and why they're teaching instead of running a business.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, like I said, they ran businesses, they retired, and now they're just doing it for something to do. And that's totally fine. Listen to that person. But a lot of times,
them that can do, them that can't teach.
for the
That's
most part,
the thing.
yeah, for the most part. But again, people still have to know about your product, which there's another one later down the list that we'll get to shortly. But anything to add to that myth of being an entrepreneur?
Nope, I think we covered it.
No, the biggest lesson you'll learn up front is you got to be ready to take some hits and losses, because it's not gonna. I'm not gonna say it's not gonna explode overnight, but it's probably not gonna explode overnight.
Well, I was reading the other day an article, and what I took from that article was overnight success usually takes 15 years.
Diamond Dallas Page, famous pro wrestler, former WCW world champion, 2-time I believe, but after he retired from the ring. Oh yeah, Sosa. YouTube is an example. Oh gosh, Sosa knows all about that, how long it takes for YouTube to grow. We know our other podcast, the Average Intelligence Podcast, has been on the air. It'll be, oh wow, it has only been 3. It'll be 3 years in October. And I'd say within the last 4 months, 3 or 4 months, we've started to see actual like a noticeable increase. Before then, it was very steady. Yeah, you're right. Although, yeah, you're very right. Sosa can speak to that. Yeah, because Sosa's YouTube channel is quite a bit larger than ours, but it took grinding, a lot of hard work, and a lot of time, and sending a lot of messages to people saying, "Hey, check this video out. Please give it a thumbs up." And that's the dirty little secret, is you have to peddle your stuff. You have to get in front of people. You have to pay for some advertising. It's going to cost you money, and it's going to be very, very frustrating. But if you're ready for that, then you just might make it. But if you think your business is going to explode overnight, but what I was saying about Diamond Dallas Page, After he retired from the ring, he started a yoga program. And he'll always joke because they went on Shark Tank and everything. And by the time they got on Shark Tank, they'd been doing it for like 7 or 8 years. They didn't blow up on Shark Tank, but they had very gradual rise. And then he always jokes and says we were an 8-year overnight success.
Yeah.
Because they did hit that part. Yeah, because they did hit that part where they shot up, but it took 8 years to get there.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend like that wasn't a dig at me, so you know me, I'm busy. He says, you're so right. Hate that I still have to message people. They don't check their notifications. Shake my head. I'm sorry, bro. I'm busy. I do eventually get to it. But we appreciate your support too, my man Sosa. Thank you very much. Hopefully you dropped the video a like. So the next one we have is this. We talked about this too. Again, from entrepreneur.com. Entrepreneurship will give me back control over my schedule.
Hey, you have control over it. Yeah, you're in the business 24/7.
And that includes, so there's this other thing that entrepreneurs do, and this is a quirk of me. So you'll hear a lot of people, sorry, so says, thanks for the comments, buddy. Oh, it actually wasn't a gig. Talking about other people. Join my membership. You're 1,000%. Okay, that's right. I did join your membership. Yeah, man. No biggie. Yeah, for those of you who want to, you can join Sosa's membership and get some perks on YouTube. It's 99 cents a month. Like, it's nothing. Go support the man. But there's this thing that internet or Instagram entrepreneurs do all the time. They're like, I work 100 hours a week. Blah 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 blah. Do you? Do you really work 100 hours a week? Do you really work 80 hours a week? Do you work 60? Really? What is work to you? Is work piddling on your phone? Now, let's assume for a moment, because they may not be lying, but it's what do you consider work? So if you consider my podcasts work, which I don't really, but let's assume that you do. So my regular job is a minimum of 46 hours a week. My main business. So that's a minimum of 46 hours. So we'll even be considerate and say I leave an hour early one day. So we'll call it 45. There's 2 podcasts I do weekly, which are anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So they're usually about an hour and a half. So let's say a total of 3 hours a week. So that's 48 hours a week. And then every single day I'm editing and uploading content, and I can't even begin to quantify all that because I fit it in sparingly. And then let's say this is what the internet entrepreneurs do. So then let's say that I consider my workouts work too because I'm on camera and I have to, be in shape, So that's, we'll be conservative. So that's probably anywhere from 3 to 7 hours a week. So let's call it 3. What are we up to now? 51 hours a week. And then there's driving. Is driving included? I mean, I'm driving to work, so it just keeps. You find I call it the LinkedIn resume because it's like you add every little thing and you make the most obnoxiously long title you can. I hate LinkedIn with a passion.
I think while I drive, does that count?
But there's the flip side of it. So that's me. That's me putting undue pressure on myself. But when you're an entrepreneur, you never really stop working per se. Because, well, that's not true. You do stop working, but you're not on a set schedule at all. So you could be.
I don't think it ever leaves your head.
Not really. There's moments here and there. But what I'm saying is if you're doing that, just take that with a grain of salt when somebody's like, I work 60 hours a week, because most people cannot work 60 hours a week. There are people who can, and I applaud them. And it's usually the people that are like digging ditches or building roads or building houses, putting roofs on, working in a factory. Those people work like crazy, and they should be getting the accolades and the applause, but they don't because we just prefer not to think about that. Or the contractors I know, because I know a lot of contractors who are working, 8 to 10 hours a day on jobs and then going home and they have to spend 2-3 hours doing estimates. First thing in the morning, they're calling people back. Like, that's real work. So long story short, your schedule will not be your own. But part of that does kind of lie with the entrepreneur. But it's one of those things because if you just say, you know what, and I've met people who did this. They're like, you know what, we're gonna only work this time to this time these days, and sometimes they succeed.
Chick-fil-A, we will not be open on Sunday.
Yeah, although I wonder how much seed money they have. But very, very good point. And it sucks because my only day off is Sunday, and I'd be out and about. It happens all the time. Like, oh, Chick-fil-A sounds good, and then I get there and I go, damn it, it's Sunday.
Yeah.
Mm. But yeah, the old schedule. If you want a free schedule, marry someone who's rich.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I can give you.
But if you're an entrepreneur, it won't help anyway. Because you'll always be doing some business.
Well, I mean, you can still marry somebody rich, and then they can bankroll your.
Yeah.
Which that's not saying these people aren't entrepreneurs, but that happens a lot more often than you think. Either a wealthy spouse or parents will front the seed money, which is, hey, no hate. If it's a resource, you've got to go for it. A lot of people do it. I just wish people were more honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I'm saying. Just be honest about it. Because then you don't set that false expectation and people can kind of be prepared.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. So our next myth: never give away your product or service. It'll dilute your brand. I believed this for so long. That's as the French say, bullshit.
Yeah.
You are going to find if you have a product or service, you're probably going to have to give it away at least a while, at least a few times in the early goings.
Yeah.
It is what it is because if
And
nobody.
I'm just coming to grips with that, and I'm starting to be open to that, the concept of sending a candle to somebody, like that.
Yep, and there's actually I forget their name. There's some power washing company on TikTok and mowing company. I think they do both, but they mow people's lawns for free. But what they do is they mow the lawn for free, but they make a video out of it, and then it gets people attracted to their business. Which that's really cool because they help somebody out, and at the same time they get free advertising for their business, and what they're out a few hours work.
Yeah.
So that's actually what we call a really good deal if you really think about it, because you get free advertising.
Right.
And it's not like they're not making money, so.
Yeah.
But speaking of giving product away, not really, but it's almost free. Summer is coming to an end, which means the summer collection will be going away very, very soon. So if you want to get some of your summer, that's very strong candle. I don't like watermelon, but it's a very strong watermelon candle. So if watermelon is your thing, you will love this because just deal with it. It's for the product. If you want to get your summer candles, hurry because the summer collection will be going away in September, or probably mid-September. Actually, wait, when does summer end? Summer ends in late September, right? September 22nd?
Something like that.
That's when the summer collection will be going, making way for the Halloween collection, which was actually really popular last year. And all your favorites plus a few new ones. But if you want to get your summer candles before they're gone for the rest of the year until next summer, and the watermelon candle might not be coming back. What are we kidding? The watermelon candle is going to come back. Go to steviewix.com. That's STEVIEWIX.com and use promo code Arete to get 10% off your order at checkout.
And they're so strong you don't even have to burn them.
That's true. Personally, I recommend the Witch's Brew scent especially for Halloween. It's very good. Alrighty, so next one. We've got early on, I need to do it all myself. Now, this is one that I kind of agree with because early on, you're going to be doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
But it's when you start growing is when you need to delegate those things to other people because you will go insane. And what happens, as I've learned, when you're trying to do it all yourself, you run out of time real fast. Mm-hmm. And then you don't do anything well. You do everything adequately or badly. But I would say in the beginning, going to be doing it all yourself.
Yeah. I got to show you something because I can't let this chance pass me by.
She's going to get something to show all of you. You're seeing it here first, America. Go ahead and get the next.
Speaking of the Halloween candles, blueberry muffin. This is blueberry muffin.
That's a really big ghost.
Blueberry muffin, folks. Fresh this year. Blueberry muffin, unbelievably, is my best-selling scent. I just can't go over that, but it is.
It's because it's your strongest. Fun fact, the blueberry muffin scent of her candles, without the candle being lit, actually will cover up the smell of formaldehyde. I can speak to this personally. When I was in high school, my biology lab bought 4 of them to cover up the smell of formaldehyde.
Wow. Excuse me.
Now you're going to be, I don't remember where it is. It's in Greenfield, Indiana, right? You're going to be at that festival in October.
Riley Days.
And you will be able to see the Halloween collection there available for purchase, or you'll be able to get them when they're released at steviewicks.com, and those will be available all through until October 31st. I would say late September they're going to be made available.
But and as part of this show that I'm doing, I also do lives on Facebook every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 o'clock. As part of this, getting ready for this is a big show. It's 4 days. So, and I normally pour to order. So, in getting ready for this, I'm running Facebook specials, and you will be able to buy this candle on Facebook or any of the candles I show on Facebook at a reduced price, because as soon as they go off of my live, they're going in a box to go to the show. So if they're not purchased off my live, then they're going in a box.
So go like Stevie Wicks on Facebook so that you can be notified when the live goes live.
There you go.
But yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought up your lives because they're very important. So it's really interesting actually. Every week you do a board with different products, and they're well, they're not always at a discount, but they usually are. And sometimes it's one of a kind items too. So every week is different, and there's always something new to potentially get your hands on that nobody else might have.
Because I do jewelry too, and my jewelry is one of a kind. Even if I try to make it the same, it's going to be different. So anyway, enough of my plugs. I'm sorry.
The whole point of this is for plugging.
Oh, okay.
We do. I do another podcast with my friend Virus, who's the lead singer for the rock band Again. He started that. He won't mind me saying this. He started that podcast as basically a giant commercial for his waterless car wash. And it's allowing me to plug my stuff too. But we have a lot of fun conversations, and it's a good time. So it's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
All right. So myth number 5 from entrepreneur.com is the more clients, the better. Again, I kind of half agree with this one because it's objectively true. But what this is talking about is quality of clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've made it when you can fire customers and you're okay. You're in a different market, though, so you're retail, so that doesn't really apply to you.
It does, though.
Oh, no, that's true, yeah, because somebody could be a whiner, a complainer.
Right. Yeah. There's some people you won't please, no matter what.
And that's the key, too. The best advice I can give you is you don't necessarily have to have an attorney on call, but you should know one. The minute somebody says the word sue, you send them an email and saying all further correspondence will be handled through my attorney, blah, 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 blah. That usually nips it in the bud.
Yeah.
because a lot of people will throw the word sue around, but they usually don't follow through with it because it's usually stupid and would not go very far to begin with. They just, or my personal favorite is, I'll leave a negative review. We can respond to that, right? The business owners can respond to them, and we don't want to do this. We don't want to do it, but the business owner will defend themselves and will divulge every single thing that happened and every stupid thing you said, because now we're defending our reputation. And frankly, I care a lot more about my business's reputation than I do about yours. So if you're just being a jerk, trying to get some of your money back for no legitimate reason, if there's a legitimate grievance, reach out for the company. If they're worth, reach out to the company. Sorry, if they're worth anything, they will make it right. But you gotta give them a chance to do it. So a little lesson for the consumers on the Entrepreneurship Podcast. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I can count so many times there are customers you just won't please, and I've had a couple of examples where customers have come in, they've looked around, and they're trying like mad to make something work because they want something custom, but they don't want to pay for it. And I've just had to tell them, listen, I don't think that we're going to be able to give you what you want. So we're probably not, if this is your vision, we are probably not the people that are going to make that happen for you. And it sucks.
Two things I would caution everyone. Number one, know the requirements that have to go on the label of your product. I can't stress this enough. It's very important. If I didn't put a label on the back of my candle and the bottom of my candle telling people how to burn my candle and they get burnt, they could sue me. I mean, if they burn it around a little kid and the little kid knocks it over, it's soy wax, it's not as hot as paraffin, but that baby's going to feel it. The dog's going to feel it. The wax is soap and water cleanup, but not if you dump a whole candle in the middle of a dog, That's going to be a hard cleanup. But anyway, so know the requirements, the labeling requirements for your product. And number two, if you are going to rent a building, know the legal aspects of that, what you are liable for. Because when I had my shop, a woman sued me, said that she had fallen at 11 o'clock at night. My store wasn't even open, but she had fallen on the sidewalk in front of my business, and my insurance company settled for 10 grand. I was so upset. But they'll tell you it's not worth going to court, going through everything to do that. But it turns out I was responsible for everything up to and including the curb to the street. Same token, I couldn't do what I wanted to do with that property. So you got to explore those things because some of them aren't really fair.
Well, I remember that, and what she's talking about was she was not allowed to do maintenance work on the sidewalk because that was, quote, the city's jurisdiction. But the city wasn't doing anything about it. So, yeah, that's a very, very good. And it goes without saying, get insurance.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Get insurance.
I didn't have 10 grand in my back pocket to give her,
Yeah, no. Get insurance. If you think it's too expensive, don't care. Get insurance. And if you can't afford insurance, honestly, don't open a business yet because it will save your life if it ever comes down to it.
It will.
It's like, I've heard people say, Dave Ramsey always says, not with insurance, but he always says something to the effect of, I can't afford, so in this case, it'd be like, I can't afford insurance. You can't afford to not have insurance. Because and there are people who go around and scam. It's what they do. The ambulance chasers and the dregs, the leeches of society will exploit that. And they do it to small businesses because they know, they can't pull it at Walmart because Walmart would fight them.
Yeah.
So they try to do it to small businesses because they know that most of the time they don't want to go through the hassle of going to court. So they'll just settle with insurance.
Yeah.
And then even like if you've got a vehicle associated with it, make sure that you're insured properly for commercial use.
Uh-huh.
And make sure you've got liability. Like my business has, what is it? I think it's 10 million in liability insurance, up to $10 million, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and if you slap that $40 magnet on the side of your car, you just made that a commercial vehicle.
You sure did. Which that's another thing. I forgot about this, but I made a mental note. I wanted to talk about this. Another big thing. If you're starting your business, incorporate. For the love of God, incorporate. Maybe if you're starting, well, even then, you still should, like, even if you're starting super, super small, even then, incorporate, just for liability's sake. And also, know what the different corporation structures, how they work, what the pros and cons are. The best thing you can do, honestly, is if you can afford it, which you should be able to afford it, hire a CPA who knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to business, small businesses, and they can properly advise you because different businesses have different requirements. You may need an LLC, which I found that most of the time an LLC is what you need, limited liability corporation, or you might actually need like an S corp or a C corp. But get with the CPA and they can direct you, but a CPA that works with small businesses, which a lot of them do.
Because my first CPA, I got audited. Well, they ended up giving me back $4,000 because the idiot CPA did not deduct my labor costs on my tax return. So, you know, get get referrals, know what you're doing, get a good accountant.
Yep,
Yeah.
and it's totally acceptable to sit down and talk to them just to get a feel for them.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna pay for that meeting, but the cost of a sit down meeting for an hour is way less than having a bad CPA and getting audited because they're not going to go after the CPA. Well, they might, but they're going to go after you first.
Yeah, but there are easier ways to earn $4,000 than going through an audit. I'm here to tell you.
Right, exactly. So now we're going to switch to the greatest business site ever, LinkedIn. God, I hate LinkedIn. Myth number one from LinkedIn, which this is such a LinkedIn list. Being an entrepreneur is easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Not on Earth.
Not on Earth. There's got to be a planet somewhere where being like working at Walmart is like the hardest job you can get. Just the
Yeah.
laws of averages. It's
Your
like
sister, when she was small, she told me one day, when she was probably 8, maybe. She said, "I don't know what I want to do. I either want to be a doctor or a Walmart checker hour person."
so you cut out a bit. She's talking about my sister when she was younger.
Yeah, yeah.
And hey, there's nothing wrong with being a Walmart checker outer person. You should
But that
ideally
too,
do what?
I've done that. I've done McDonald's. I've done them all.
That's another thing. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to check your ego at the door because you're going to be doing like we first opened the store. Guess who cleaned the store? Us. Guess who scrubbed the toilet? Guess who took out all the trash? Guess who stayed late with customers when customers kept you open late? Guess who goes out on deliveries when somebody doesn't show up for work? Doesn't matter what temperature it is outside. Guess who drives to Chicago sometimes when we need to pick up cabinets from Chicago? Although, to be fair, I usually don't do that because I'm kind of forbidden from leaving the showroom, but I've done it before. I do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just don't have a choice. So check your ego out the door. Nothing is beneath you and nothing is above you.
Yep.
You are above nothing. In fact, I kind of make it my personal. This is where my business partner and I have butted heads sometimes. He's like, "Oh, you just have them do that." I'm like, "No, no." It's like I know they clean the toilet over there most of the time, but I'm not. It's not beneath me.
Yeah.
So yeah, being an entrepreneur is not easy. So says LinkedIn. I had no idea.
Ah,
But they certainly make it because there's a lot of, again, the internet entrepreneurs are all talking about building passive income streams. I hate to tell you, passive income requires capital. It's not impossible to do, but yeah, if you can buy into shares of a large corporation, yeah, you'll get passive dividend income. The problem is you've got to get that $250,000 or $500,000 first, and then you're not really an entrepreneur, you're an investor. There's really no such thing as passive income when it comes to entrepreneurship until you've reached a certain level. And even then, by the time you've been in the trenches that long, it's not passive to you. You're going to have to work. And you're going to have.
is you need to provide your own retirement as an entrepreneur.
Yep, because Uncle Sam is not renowned for his ability to save money, especially your money.
Exactly. Exactly. There's no company sponsored IRA or anything when you're an entrepreneur.
Unless you build your company up to a point where you can offer
yeah.
that. Yeah, but again, that's kind of, you probably got a few of your own you probably have a few of your own IRAs by the time your company would get to that point. That's the other thing, your own health insurance, because, well,
Oh,
for the most part, if you are an entrepreneur, you're certainly not going to get any company health insurance. Again, unless you build your company up to a point where you can get that. But
or if your spouse.
or yeah, that's true. Yep, your spouse. Um, but I know quite a few couples that are both entrepreneurs. They started their own companies and they pay out the ass for basic catastrophe health insurance, which makes zero sense to me because I guess maybe if your industry is more hazardous, but then because you're required by law to have workman's comp if you are in. Well, I think you're. Yeah, you're. Well, but that's law. That's required. So. But
You got to pay for that.
oh yeah, you got to pay for that and payroll taxes and
Yeah.
basically, if you can think it, they'll tax it.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get taxed. So that's why you'll find very quickly if you're not a Republican yet, become an entrepreneur. You'll become one really fast.
And the other thing is, if you get on the bad list of the Indiana Department of Revenue or the IRS, you will play hell getting off of it. Even if you've paid every penny they say you owe, oh my God, one after another after. You just never stop getting those notices for about 3 years.
I kept getting notices from the sheriff's department for unpaid sales tax because of an error
Yeah.
on their part, and I was getting them for years. And you'd get they're very scary because it's like, plus penalties, you owed the state 580 some odd dollars over a $5 discrepancy that wasn't even correct.
Yeah.
Now, all you have to do is call them and you can get it straightened out. But a lot of that's another thing. If you are behind financially on anything, the worst thing you can do is ignore them.
Yeah.
These
Really.
these people do not want to take your business. They don't want to take your car. They don't want to take your house. They want your money. They will most likely work with you. The IRS is very good about setting up payment plans. If you owe income tax, for example, they're fantastic. The best thing and you avoid penalties by doing so, or at least minor penalties. They're not particularly bad. Even the Department of Revenue, they've been extremely helpful before. Not with my independent small business, but with our larger business, they've been extremely helpful because again, they want your revenue. They want your business to stay because they'll get more money.
And that's not true on anything. Your rent. I mean, your landlord does not want that empty building.
No.
So is he going to work with you if you get a month or two behind? Oh yeah, probably.
Well, that's another thing. I have an income property, and there's been a couple of times where my tenant knew they were going to be late, or knew something was going on. In fact, at one point they almost moved out. Because they had some medical issues come up and they were very forthcoming. They said, I don't know if I'll be able to pay. And I was like, well, hang on. What's going on? And it turns out they were looking at worst possible scenario. There were a lot of variables. And I said, okay, pause. Let's just stay here. Because I didn't want that site empty. I have the best tenant ever. Frankly, if I lost a couple of months but got to keep the tenant, I would keep the tenant. But we basically, it ended up being fine. It was very minor. They were behind on a couple of months rent and they paid back incrementally. It wasn't a big deal. But
Yeah.
I was just like, no, let's not, just don't move. Let's just calm. Let's figure out everything that's going on. And it ended up not being that big of a deal. But the key to that was I didn't have to chase them down for money. They let me know ahead of time. And it was not an issue. I was more than willing to work with them. Now, granted, some landlords are assholes, but they tend to not do very well. Funny that.
Yeah.
What else? What else do you recommend? I do recommend reading books. Take them with a grain of salt. One book I would recommend, if whether you're going to want to be an entrepreneur or not, it's good just to read, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a very good book. It'll change your life.
Book.
Hey, they haven't updated it though.
Yeah.
Because it works. I learned a lot from that book. There's more, and I'm completely spacing on them. But don't get so obsessed with the reading or watching of the lectures. Like this podcast, for example. This podcast will not make you successful, but there's some things you can learn from it to apply to your situation, and you kind of make your own plan based on taking what other people have done who came before you or in a similar situation. It may or may not work for you, but you take all the information and create your own path with it. But don't get so wrapped up in, like, because I've met a lot of people. It's like, oh yeah, I read an entrepreneur book every week. It's like, when do you work?
That's part of the 60 hours.
I mean, honestly, it probably is, but that can become glorified daydreaming.
Yeah.
You know, if your time would be better spent if you have to choose between reading the next chapter of your entrepreneur book and fulfilling an order, fulfill the order.
Definitely.
Or if you have an hour left in your day and you could be working on social media marketing or reading your business book, do the social media marketing.
Yeah.
Read the business book when you have time, absolutely. But don't let it get in the way of actually doing what you're trying to learn how to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing. All right, what's next for us on LinkedIn if you don't have anything else to add?
I do not.
Being an entrepreneur is glamorous. It can be. I think what they're trying to say is like, oh, I opened my business and now I have millions of dollars and I can buy the finest clothes and I bought my Ferrari.
Have you seen the clothes I pour candles in?
Well, you wouldn't want to wear nice clothes
Not
to pour
glamorous.
candles in. No, but I guess that depends on your definition of glamorous too, because I guess I would say I respect the hell out of people that are in there working.
But you know what? The other thing I would say is if you're an entrepreneur, people think you're rich. They do.
That's true. That's true. It's not. I've had employees that made more money take home paid than I did. More than once. It's happened a couple of times because you want to keep talented people in there because they're ultimately making you money, but you have to. I actually just the other day, just this week, I got the first pay raise I've ever gotten at that company. Do what?
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know, it was real good. We just find, and you know what was funny about it? It's not even so much that we're like, oh, we're doing well. The economic realities are we have to pay ourselves more to be able to live.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to figure it out somehow. But and that's the harsh reality. Thanks, Biden.
Yeah. He's great. It's better than when he took office.
Well, okay, and that's largely not his fault when he took office.
But he said it with a straight face.
I mean, it is better than when he took off. Well, kind of. No, It was already going that way though. To be fair.
Well, it's the very beginning of the pandemic too.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Which,
saying. It was already heading that way. There wasn't a ton. To be fair, there wasn't a ton he could have done to stop it. A lot of things were already set in motion, but there, let's just say mistakes were made.
well, I'm in a lot worse shape now than I was even 3 years ago.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is there a lot of that stuff was already going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
But like for example, speaking of entrepreneurs, my good friend Eric, co-host of the Average Intelligence podcast, had a thriving cryptocurrency mining business, and then when almost it started to decline when Biden took office, almost to the day, and he no longer has that business. He had to close it down. It was no longer financially viable. So he's got a personal vendetta against Joe Biden. But not to get into politics, but that's another thing. It's a sad fact, but politics affect the market, and whether it's appropriate or it doesn't even have to be true. Like I keep talking about, I have a piece of land that I own. Plan was always to sell it. Once that economic downturn started, I knew I wasn't even going to be able to think about selling it realistically until the end of 2024, probably 2025, and that depends on how the presidential election goes.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. So I've got a piece of land that's worth, I don't know exactly what it's worth right now, but I'd say at least $25,000, if not more. And it's just going to sit there until people feel comfortable enough to buy land again. So, and unfortunately, it's a sad fact, but when a Republican's in the White House, the market tends to do better in the sense that people are more willing to take financial risk, because oftentimes when there's a Republican in the White House, there's a lot of deregulation that happens and frees up the markets. Now, those can have bad long-term consequences, as we've seen like with the 2008 financial crisis, which that was a direct result of deregulation of banking and people being so greedy that they created fraudulent financial products based upon bad mortgages that never should have been lent out, and they were only able to do that because they were allowed to after the deregulation, and they cared more about making money today than the potential risk. And the biggest thing though is that they lied about it. That's the biggest thing. If they'd been transparent about these investments, it would not have come to that. And that's the part of it that nobody really talks about it. They all talk, oh, they deregulated banking. It's like, yeah, but nobody talks about the fact that they lied. They lied about how good these financial products were. They were telling people they were A and B mortgages when they were actually C, D, and F. Maybe a handful of A's, some B's in there. You should watch The Big Short. The Big Short. If you haven't watched it, it goes over. It's a dramatic version of the 2008 financial crisis, but it's very informative. I learned a lot of terms that I'd never heard before from watching that movie.
Well, and that actually caused a lot of personal bankruptcies. People lost their houses because they'd been paying $300 a month, and all of a sudden that small print went into effect, and their mortgage payment was now $950.
You know,
And
I talked to my realtor some time ago, and he's telling me there are people now taking out variable rate interest mortgages again, and I'm just like, and before people say anything in the comments, we've already been through this. Yes, I understand there are certain times when a variable rate makes sense because you're doing a short-term investment, but even then, I'm a low risk kind of guy when it comes to money. There's no situation in which you can convince me that a variable interest rate loan is ideal, because I know Murphy real well.
yeah,
Murphy's Law. Murphy and I, like, if I didn't hate the guy so much, we'd be like this. Like,
go way back.
yeah, we go way back, me and Murphy. And he always shows up at the worst time too. That's another thing. Get real used to Murphy.
But they had all these big contractors or big uh, real estate companies building these developments and getting people in there with a $300 a month rent pay or mortgage payment. Well, the small print said after 2 years, you're not subsidized anymore. Your mortgage goes to $950. Nobody wanted to hear that, and nobody wanted to read that. And if they did read it, they said, well, we'll get raises along the way and we'll grow with that mortgage.
Yeah.
You ain't growing that much.
Well, and some of them got caught selling to people who didn't even, giving loans to people who didn't even speak English, so they shouldn't have been able to sign the contract in the first place.
Yeah.
That I guess they may have had translators, but yeah, it's not good, people. That's another thing. Borrowing money for a business. This is going to be somewhat controversial. Don't do it. It's been my experience. It's not now.
All business loans are only for 300 employees, small businesses,
Well, yeah,
So
that's just it. Now, the one exception might be once you've got a business going. It's one of the few times I would actually advocate for using credit. Having a rotating line of credit or a credit card that you pay off, it does help with cash flow. But you have to be a certain size business to even make that viable. Because my business, that's very beneficial because we go through ebbs and flows. So having that, buying all the product on credit and then paying the credit off when we get paid on the order is a system that works pretty well. But you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it because if you have a downturn, then all of a sudden you've got debt and no income coming in. So use it wisely. But for personal finance, I don't really recommend debt at all outside of like a mortgage, just because let's be realistic. And maybe a car payment depending on your situation, although it's not ideal, especially now because these interest rates are stupid right now for cars. Like, did you know I didn't even know this was possible. There are car loans that now have terms of 84, and I think they've gone up to 96 months.
Yeah.
Just to make the payment affordable.
We were watching TV the other night, and a commercial came on for heating and air conditioning, and they were saying, "Yeah, let us get in there now and keep you cool and keep you warm. We'll finance it, and you only pay $100 a month for 120 months."
120 months?
That's 10 years.
Oh, I know. I did the math. By the time
it's paid for, you're going to need another one. So, yeah. Steve didn't catch it at first. I said, that's 10 years. What? Oh.
Well, that's a perfect segue into LinkedIn's myth number 3 about being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur means making big money. We pretty well already covered that, but I mean, that's another thing. A lot of people, I don't know where they get it. Well, actually, I know exactly where they get this idea. They see the people on the internet who's like, yeah, I started my online business at 17. They don't ever say what the online business actually is. They just say I started a business online at 17, and now I make $25,000 a month. I've got 3 luxury sports cars. I've got the best watches, blah, blah, blah. First of all, it's a lie. And second of all, if somebody can't tell you what they do, take it with a massive grain of salt.
Yeah. What do you sell?
Amazon dropshipping is not being an entrepreneur. It's also not new, and it's also not something that 99% of the people who try it actually succeed in. And then my other favorite one is like, oh yeah, you can just go to Amazon and see what's selling and then buy it on Alibaba. Average consumers can buy them on Alibaba, and you don't have to buy a case of them. You can buy single items on Alibaba. So just download Alibaba and buy your stuff there. Yeah. It's not that hard. That's the other thing too, though, is a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start, they still have their regular 9-to-5 job.
Sure.
Especially in this kind of economic environment, you pretty well have to.
Yeah. But that one store that I thought really had the right idea was that one called Weekends. And they were just open. They were a furniture store, and they were just open on the weekends.
Yeah, but they closed.
Yeah. I thought they got it. They closed.
Clearly not.
Apparently they didn't have it.
You know what I think, though? I think the concept was good. I think their overhead was too big. Because that place was pretty big.
Yeah, it was.
if you had a smaller place, because that's true. That is the bulk. Well, we say that, and for a long time, our busiest day was Saturday, but for the past year, it really hasn't been.
But what I'm saying is, if you had a full-time job and you
Oh,
were in work, that would be it. Weekends.
yeah, yeah, and that's something that's totally viable.
Yeah. Talk for a minute. I'll be right back.
Ah, yes, the ever-present myth of the online entrepreneur. There are so many of them out there, and I'm not saying doubt everyone. Doubt everyone, but take it with a grain of salt. Truly, one thing just to plug myself real quick. Part of Arete is the Arete Podcast Network, and basically what that is, it's not a. We're not trying to sell you anything. It costs you nothing. But if you have an idea for a podcast, feel free to reach out. You can comment here or reach out to me on my Instagram at jake.account.ability. I'll put that somewhere, probably I'll put it in the description here in a moment. But so if you have an idea for a podcast, reach out, and what we can do is we can help you, take you every step of the way on how we did it. It's not the only way to do it. You can, if you have an idea and you just want to do the cross promotion side of it, absolutely go nuts. But we've got tutorial videos that can show you how to do that. Again, those are free. It's a playlist that's only shared. If you want to join that, Confederation of Independent Creators, we have a Discord server where everybody is welcome. You get access to it, and you can talk to everyone who's on the podcast network. Share ideas if you need help with something. Everybody on there is ready and willing to help because we're all just trying to help each other get better and get more exposure. And plus, you already got, I think right now you would get 6 or 7 followers right out of the gate when you start your podcast. So that's just some food for thought, and doesn't cost you anything. And if you monetize, that's your money. We don't want a penny of it. Alrighty, so myth number 4. Being an entrepreneur, it's funny, we complained about all these already. Being an entrepreneur gives you freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess in a way, but it comes down to how I've always described entrepreneurship for me is like, at least if it's mine, if I lose or fail, I can only blame myself. Which I guess is not 100% true, but that's how I think about it anyway. Because at least if it's in my hands, I have control over it and I control my destiny, and that means a lot to me as a person. But the unfortunate truth is, as we're learning now economically, you don't always. And what the pandemic taught us, the pandemic was rough because what happened there, we weren't even forced to shut down. We were open because we were an essential business. But because everybody was scared of their own shadow, nobody came in. And yeah, that was a very, very rough time. And if I disliked the government before, I hated them during that. Because they knew not what they did, and nor did they care. Because, I'm sorry, when you convince people that if they go outside, they are in danger, funny thing happens, people stop going outside. Although, we are fortunate in the fact that we do live in Indiana, where, for the most part, people just flip the middle finger to authority. I was very proud of my state because it did not take people long to be like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is there was a lot of that free government money going around, and I saw a lot of TVs get bought.
And I didn't see it going to the small businesses either.
Nope. That was the biggest scam ever because all that money went to Walmart, Amazon, and Target, and McDonald's. I guess when they were doing pickup and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yep. If you want to cripple an economy or a certain business, create an existential threat, doesn't even have to be a serious one.
I don't know about your small businesses. My small business didn't qualify for any of that government money for small businesses.
I mean, we did, but and frankly, it's the only reason we're still open. But again, that just made me angry because it's like, great, now, like they caused this mess. Yeah, they better pay me. I actually, this is true. This can be verified. I have someone who can verify it. When they announced that they were doing the shutdowns, when Holcomb came on TV and said that, before I looked at the list of, which the list was 6 pages long of businesses that were exempt. So I'm like, this is stupid.
Essential businesses, 6 pages of
Six
them.
pages of essential businesses. Yeah, this is real serious, right? But what I said verbatim, I said, if he tells me to close, he can kiss my ass or pay me. I don't care which. And my business partner said, "Oh, you will not." I'm like, I know where the governor's mansion is. I will absolutely go down there because it's don't care. Pay me or I'm staying open.
Yep.
But we were an essential business, so we were able to stay open. Although now, in hindsight, we should have just closed.
But pardon me, but I don't consider cabinets an essential business, but that's just me.
It's because it's building materials, and there are people that are in the middle of projects. So I get, and we also sell flooring. So, but again, like, what is essential? Like, people have to eat, do they not?
Yeah.
So grocery stores are open, but restaurants aren't. Now I get it; they can do takeout, but
I can't cook.
well, you know what though? I said this, and like I never considered it a big deal because liquor stores were still open. Always, 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 always. If you're looking to see if something is BS or not, look at what politicians like and whether or not they can still do that. Politicians want their alcohol. So if liquor stores are still open, it wasn't as serious as they were letting on. And then there are a number of people who will remain nameless who were caught red-handed violating the stay-at-home orders in various states across the union and across various party lines. Not going to pretend like it was only one side. The difference is there was one side that said this is all stupid, and then there was another side that said, no, no, everyone must stay home.
Alcohol's a disinfectant. That's why they had to stay open.
Actually, somebody did give me some legitimate justification for that, but I'm kind of like, which I'm biased. I don't drink, so I don't have sympathy for it, but that's personally. They're like, yeah, well, if there are people that are dependent on alcohol, and if they go into withdrawals, it's a medical issue, and I'm just kind of like, well, which one's worse? The unspecified ailment that I will not say for fear of YouTube trying to censor me. Fuck it, it was COVID. Which one's worse, alcohol withdrawal or COVID? That's a legitimate question. I know the answer, but that's why liquor stores were open, because they knew. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. But I guess one side of being an entrepreneur is the government is not your friend. So depend on them for nothing, and they're going to take everything anyway. They're going to take everything they can get their grubby little hands on, and that's both parties. So they're not going to save you. You will succeed in spite of them, not with their help. So don't even ask for it because they're not going to give it to you.
Right.
Unless you get to a point where you're in bed with them, in which case I don't like you anymore because I consider corporatism evil. I think corporatism is frankly worse than socialism in many ways because it's kind of the closest to fascism without being fascist. Like, a lot of people don't know this. Do you know that Volkswagen, the company, was originally created by the Nazi Party? It was a socialist company. That was a question.
Say it again.
The company Volkswagen, the car,
Right.
that company was originally founded by the Nazi Party.
Uh-huh.
So it was created under a fascist regime through the government. Now, after the war, the British took it over. It's a totally different company now, but it was founded, and there were other companies that were founded the exact same way. I think Fanta is another one, the drink Fanta. But then after the war, Coca-Cola comes in, and they're like, we want this.
Yeah.
But yeah, these were all companies that were created, the government propping up industries and picking winners and losers, and that's what corporatism is, and that sounds suspiciously like fascism or socialism in a certain vein.
Right.
The final myth from LinkedIn: being an entrepreneur is for everyone. A more false word had never been spoken. it takes a very special breed. There's a lot of people who think they can do it, and they just can't. It's a lot of
Well,
work.
I don't know if you remember this, but I told you you were very young, and I don't. We used to have these really deep conversations, remember? And I remember telling you there are just two ways to get rich in this country. You take a job and you work at it and you stay there and you put your money away, you save your money, and then you might come up with a decent retirement. And the other way is to be an entrepreneur and be in control of your own future. And that I still stand by that. That doesn't mean that every entrepreneur is going to end up wealthy,
No,
obviously.
no, no. And I mean, Dave Ramsey, somebody I respect a lot for the most part. They did that big study of millionaires in the U.S. I think they just over 10,000 millionaires. Most of them didn't become millionaires until they were in their 50s or 60s because they did it, like that way. You.
And after four bankrupt companies, and
Oh no, even the ones
fall
that
down, you
just.
get up. You fall down, you get up.
Well, even the one, not even the entrepreneur ones, the ones that just like you said, they worked a job, they saved their income, they lived on less than they made, they invested, and then by the time they, you know, again, were in their 50s, 60s, by the time they got to retirement, they were in fact millionaires. So, like, and that's one way, and that's a perfectly viable way. The downside to that is it takes time,
Yeah, it does.
which so does
And
building a
it
business.
takes a personality that can work in that environment and keep their mouth shut. That's not me.
That's a very painful. So if you're someone who at your job currently and you just grind your teeth every day because you know this could be done better, this could be done more efficient, or
Yeah.
this could just be done better. I was in that very situation. I was in a situation where my current employer, well, that's a lie. I have some ill will towards them, but not enough to keep me up at night. I certainly did at the time, but because they didn't want to expand, that affected my income directly. And
Uh-huh.
I had a problem with that. And that's usually where the first frustration comes in because you're like, I'm killing myself. And it's a sentiment I completely understand. I'm killing myself and they're making the money, which, first of all, they're probably not making as much money as you think they are. But if you're working for a giant corporation, yes, the head of that corporation is probably making too much money. The difference between me and somebody who would lean more like a socialist says, well, that money shouldn't be taken from them, but I do believe they should be doing a better job with it. Because with that kind of wealth comes a lot of responsibility, and I think a lot of people aren't taking that responsibility seriously. But that's a separate point. I don't think you should take that money from them; they earned it. But it does make you think, though, because it's like, man, if I was making a tenth of Jeff Bezos' money, I could change the world. But so, what do you think about? So, obviously, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, but if you have that spark, you might just be an entrepreneur. If you're watching everybody around you and you just know this operation could be so much better, you might be an entrepreneur. If you find yourself frustrated working a 12-hour day, for example, or a 10-hour day, and you feel like, wow, I didn't make that much more money, you might be an entrepreneur. If you find yourself with big dreams or you have that idea and you just know you can do it better than anybody else, you just might be an entrepreneur.
If you work in a place and watch management do it wrong all day long, you might just be an entrepreneur.
Management tends to do that. Do you remember that?
What is it?
Management?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so where was this? No, this is when we both worked at McDonald's. You came in. We both came in one day. I can't remember, but there was a sign somewhere, and I don't even remember what it said, but it said "Thanks Management," but they left the e off of management. So
Management.
management
Yeah.
or management.
Now, when your boss leaves you notes and it's misspelled words on every other line,
Or when your boss prints out a financial report with incorrect math,
yeah,
you're like, no, no, that's not 15 hours. That's 18. You got to carry the.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Something
Nah,
else.
well, and I'll tell you, there kind of the opposite of this. There's one industry where there's a lot of people who think they're entrepreneurs and they are not, and that is contractors, like construction contractors. I've heard so many. Actually, the biggest complaint of the contractors I know is like, yeah, my guy decided he wanted to go and start his own thing, and usually a couple months later, after they have a job go south and they're threatened to be sued, they come back and they're like, can I just work with you some more? So no, it's not for everybody because again, you have to tolerate a lot of things, but if you have that spirit, it's worth it in the end. And you're going to meet a lot of very amazing people, and you're going to meet some people that wow, I wish I'd never met that prick.
And
And
no
you're
matter, um, it's gone.
no matter
If you still have your memory, you're probably not an entrepreneur.
this,
No.
this is off topic, but I have to tell you this joke because I heard this. The joke wasn't being told to me, but I heard it. It was in the background, and it's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Well, it's the funniest clean joke I've ever heard. So I was sitting at my desk doing work, and at the time we had a girl working for us, and she was working with a contractor, and this is so funny. He was having trouble hearing her because he was an older guy, and she had to speak up one time, and he goes, "Yeah, my doctor said my hear the doctor said hearing's the second thing to go. I can't remember what the first thing was." And it hit me with the delayed fuse, and it hit me before it hit the girl because he said it in a way you did. It wasn't obvious he was telling a joke, and it hit me, and I lost it. I just was busting out laughing. I'm like, that is one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And like a typical old man telling a joke, he just goes, "Yep, it's a good one." Well, I think that's a good point to end on, actually, unless you have anything to add.
I do not. Just please, if you're gonna take the plunge, do your homework or
And
your
take it,
legal homework and your financial homework. Just do the homework.
and it's okay to take it slow. For example, if you have, let's say you want to make candles, for example, start slow. Make some for your friends. See if you can have a knack for it. It's going to cost you a little bit up front, but see if you have the skills, and then you know start charging little by little. You started out on well, you didn't start out on Facebook, but after you had the fire, right? You kind of started out only doing online, and you
Uh,
started out just on Facebook, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to start small. Like my business, I was very fortunate when we opened my company. We were both of the impression that if we could do like 500,000 in sales a year, we'd be good. We opened on October 1st. We did 650,000 that first year, not the first full year from October to December.
Yeah.
So we had a problem most people don't have where we grew too fast, and that's its own learning curve. Which it's a fun problem to have, but it is definitely a problem because we literally thought, and then the first full year we were in business, we did double what we were projecting we would do. We did 1.2 million. Um, we weren't caught up until the next year. We did not have a handle on it. We were succeeding in spite of ourselves because people just kept giving us money. It
Yeah.
was But we were losing a lot of money because we didn't have the infrastructure. There were a lot of mistakes being made that we took care of it. We would never try to pass anything on to the customer, but that stuff was costing us money, and we had to hire people, and we had to hire people fast. So these people sucked and didn't. We were paying out so much in. At one point, we had 6 employees in a separate warehouse that was off premises, and it was too much. It was not efficient. So that's a problem you can have too.
Yeah, and the other thing, particularly if you're starting a retail, you gotta have bags. You gotta put your product in something. You gotta have a cash register. You can't do it with an adding machine and changing your pocket.
No.
These things you've got to do your homework, and you got to think it through, and you just do.
Well, and in the vein of taking it slow, really, really think in the beginning, especially if you're going to have a storefront, really think about your hours. Because it's real easy to be like, oh yeah, I'll just be open 7 days a week from 8 to 7. It will kill you.
Yeah. After 2 months of that, you're like,
and burnout is real.
very real.
Now, the problem is when you're an entrepreneur and you have burnout, you just have to suck it up, buttercup. But that's part of planning. Be realistic about what you can do, because maybe you've got a disability that you have to consider, or you just have to consider that you're a human being and you need to sleep occasionally.
Disability brings up a whole nother point. If you're buying a building, that's another thing you have to look at. When does it have to be handicap accessible? And what does that mean? Very real stuff.
Here's another one that nobody thinks about. What are you going to eat during the day?
Yeah.
It's true. That was you're gonna have to meal prep and bring, because it's too expensive to eat out every day, especially if you're the only work in the store. It means you're gonna have to have it delivered, which adds probably 30% onto the food bill itself. You're gonna have to meal prep. Are you gonna have time to cook? When are you gonna go to the grocery store? These are all things that nobody ever thinks about. Especially if you're alone like me, and you can't rely on somebody else to cook or clean or go to the grocery store, or heaven forbid you want to exercise every now and again, or you don't have a social life. Let's just be real. When you open a business, you're not going to have a social life. You should invite people to your store to hang out. Maybe get some free labor.
Yep.
Any other advice for the would-be entrepreneurs, or shall we wrap this podcast up?
I think we should wrap it up.
Alrighty, thank you everybody for enjoying another episode of the Arete Podcast. As always, it was a pleasure to be here. And make sure to get your Stevie Wicks candle, steviewicks.com. I can personally guarantee it's the best candle you will ever burn. You got to talk to show them.
Blueberry muffin. It's a wiener.
I believe it's a winner. But as always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support is appreciated if you haven't already. And if you prefer to listen to this podcast as opposed to watch it, you can find it on all your major audio podcast streams, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Oh, we have comments. Stoner Bros presents, says, for real, delivery is so expensive and food prices help. Not worry about eating the day. Absolutely. He said wiener. Haha. Speaking of food, but you can find the audio version of this podcast on Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, basically all of your major audio streaming platforms. And we will see you again in September. Don't have the guests lined up yet, but we will. And be sure to check out the other podcasts on the Arete Podcast Network. You can find them all at aretemedia.org. There is a link in the description for that, as well as a link for Stevie Wicks. Don't forget to use your promo code Arete to save 10%, and we will see you all in September.
Thank you for having me.